I wasn't actually sure what each candidate was. I mean, each of the speakers was going to say. So, and I know that some of these ideas go by quickly. So I put together a short PowerPoint presentation. What I'll do is just, if the topic's already been covered, you can read the slide and I'll move on. But I just wanted to present it because I think our discussion here should be informed by what has happened. And I think we really need to move to more than discussing, the pros and cons. We need to talk about how we move forward. There is enabling state legislation, which is what Phil Andrews was talking about, and that allows all counties in the state of Maryland to enact their own public financing laws along the lines that Montgomery County has done. There is nothing that stops the Prince George's County Council from doing it. All we need is legislation and a majority vote on the council and a signature of the executive. And of course, we have to make sure that there's funding in the program. So nothing is stopping us. And also, the State Board of Elections has said that they will monitor and manage the program for all counties as they are doing for Montgomery County. So we don't have to set up a system in Prince George's. Phil talked about the Montgomery County model in some detail. It is a voluntary program. You agree to take contributions from individuals. Their cap is $150 per individual in a 4-year cycle, and you must demonstrate broad support, and the matching funds come from in-county donors only. And the way the threshold is set up is, again, something that Phil mentioned, and I think this is important to know, that because people don't want to give their tax dollars to somebody who's not really a strong candidate supported by the community. So this ensures that the candidate who's getting the matching funds is, in fact, has the support of people in the community. And I think that's an important step. So I've just listed what the Montgomery County model says. It's 10,000 donations from 125 donors if you're running for a district race, a larger amount from a larger number of donors if you're running for an at-large seat, and then $40,000 from 500 donors if you're running for the executive. And then there is the match that Phil went through. It's interesting because suppose you have a council candidate who raises, say, $10,000 in $50 chunks from 200 donors. You've met your threshold, and you end up with $50,000 in your campaign account, which, as Mary said, is actually enough to run a district race in Prince George's County. So that, I think, gives you an idea of how a candidate can actually run for office in a district race. I mean, I can almost certainly guarantee that if you're getting donations from 200 people, you at least have the votes of 400 or maybe 600 or 800 people. And so you've had these meetings, you've had these house parties, these town hall meetings, and you've convinced a lot of people that your message is right. And the thing is, once somebody gives you some money, you not only have their vote, they're probably going to tell their friends and neighbors, I've given this person money, it's a really good candidate with a good message. So you have 200 people carrying your message forward. It's not just you and your campaign. And then the second piece was, of course, that you can't just go and get the largest amount of money and say I've met the dollar threshold, because you do have to meet the number of donor threshold as well. So there is an onus to actually reach out to people. Yeah, and there's no limit to how much a publicly financed candidate can spend in an election, because as Phil said, that's what Citizens United is about. There is a limit on how much you can receive in matching funds, and the amounts are listed there. For district council candidate in Montgomery County, $75,000, for an at-large $250,000, and for the executive $750,000. I think the point that I really like about this is that public financing. Yes. It's 125 for district. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Right. Okay. 250 for at-large and 750.
Per primary, per general.
Right, and that's different for Howard. So I know there's all these intricacies that go into it. Which, yeah, thank you for that correction. I mean, what I really like is the clean beginning and the clean end. You have to set up a publicly financed campaign account. You can't take money from your old account and put it into the new account and say that that works. And you also, when you finish your race, if you lose your primary, whatever is left goes back into the public coffers. If you win your primary, you get to keep that money for the general. But once the general election is over, whatever money remains goes back into the public coffers. So you don't have elected officials then supporting other elections that you never meant to support in the first place. Your money is given to a candidate for a particular race, and you want that candidate for that race, and you want them to win, which is why you gave them the money. You didn't give them the money so they could take it and give it to other candidates for other races that you may or may not support. So, and as I said, the State Board of Elections is managing the program. I think the question is always asked, what will it cost? You know, and I sort of, I mean, I don't want to be glib and say that we can't afford not to have a small donor program, because, I mean, that is true. But I think we should look at the cost, and I think if we fairly discuss the cost, we can put this into perspective and explain why it is that this is not such an important question. So the funding, you know, nationwide programs show that the funding is about $2 per taxpayer in a particular area. So, I mean, that's a rough estimate. That's one way of looking at it. The anticipated cost in Prince George's County is roughly of the order of $1.5 to $2 million. And I mean, what's the budget in Prince George's County? The budget is about $3.8 billion. Okay, so that's equivalent to looking at a family with a household income of about $50,000 and saying, can we afford $20 for something that we think is a high priority item for our household? And I think the answer is yes, because if that's what your priority is, it's not that much money, right? And this should be the county's priority. Public financing should be the county's priority. And it wasn't that long ago when we got the at-large seats. And when we got the at-large seats, the members in the county council said, you know, we had an estimate of what it would cost to fund those two candidates for being on the council, just their salaries, their perks, I mean, whatever else, their office space, their staff. And we were told it was about $1 million a year for those two seats. And we were also told that that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, I like the drop in the bucket, right? I mean, if that's a drop in the bucket, why don't we have a couple of drops in our bucket? Because then we can get the people that we want elected into office. And I wanted to make that point because I think, you know, we have the at-large seats, they are there, and as Mary said, it's really hard for people to now run for those positions because it costs a lot of money. So, I mean, if you hear people say, do we have the money in Prince George's, we have other needs, I think it's even more important to say that we need it because we're Prince George's County and because we need small donor funding, because we can't afford to pay a lot of money for candidates to run for office. So what will it take to have a small donor program in Prince George's County? And the answer is fairly simple. It's passage of legislation by the county council, a signature from the county executive. And I want to just mention that we have had a meeting with Executive Baker's staff, and he is interested in the program. He is supportive of public financing in general. He is willing to work with the county council and with his own staff to look into it, and that's what we have. That's the message that we've received from him. And I do want to again reiterate that the legislation that gets passed, we must make sure that there's a robust funding stream in it, because there's no point in having legislation when if we have to fight year after year for the council to put money into the pot. Right, so we really want an identified funding stream that will keep this, that within a 4-year cycle we'll have enough money to put into it. So there is next steps, and I want to leave it with this slide there and open it up for questions because I think we'll be moving through all of this.